Hi guys, we're going to get started in just 1 minute. Hi guys, thanks for joining us. This is Amanda Main, and I'm also here with Stephanie Sykes from Quality and Safety Registry team. Today we're going to go over the LCSR. A few things that we're going to cover is dates and timelines, CMS submission, file upload, data dictionary updates that have occurred for 2019, and some frequently asked questions. All right, to get started, just as a reminder, July 31st is the deadline to submit exams for the Q2 reporting period. Any exams that are not submitted by that deadline will be included in the next quarterly report. So just to recap from the last webinar, we do still get a couple questions occasionally about how do you know if CMS is receiving your exams that you're submitting through NRDR. And the answer to that is ACR sends quarterly feedback reports to CMS that with the information that you provide to us during your data submission. The only way that an exam is going to be pulled from the back end to be able to be sent over to CMS is if the Medicare beneficiary ID has something in it, whether it be the old MBID or the new. It has to have something there, otherwise we won't send it to CMS. If you have a Medicare replacement, such as Humana, you can add the number into the Medicare beneficiary ID field. The advantage of putting a number such as Humana in the MBID field is that it'll force the exam to get reported to CMS. The disadvantage is that if the number changes to a different insurance next time you report the patient, it won't appear, or it will appear, as a new patient to LCSR. Also, the number might not fit in the MBID field, forcing you to abbreviate it. So that said, just be sure you're being consistent in which field you use so it doesn't cause duplicate exams later on. But you can put a Medicare replacement number into either the old or the new MBID field. In order to make sure that you're using the same identifier as the previous entry, if you go to the search exam link on the Lung Cancer Screening Registries page and search the patient in question, you can then locate the exam, click on the red exam number, and scroll down to the MBID field and see exactly what number was previously entered. So next we're going to discuss file upload. And the benefit of that is rather than entering one exam at a time through Register New Exams, you can do a batch upload and enter all of your exams together. If you don't have someone designated at your facility to enter exams, this is a good way to do it so you can save them all for a month and then upload them together. All right, in order to upload your exams, you have to first configure your computer. In order to do that, if you go to your control panel and then go to region and language, you're going to change the list separator from a comma to a vertical bar and apply those settings. And then you can start using the LCSR template that we provide online, which we'll go over next. And then it should, hopefully, fingers crossed, as long as all of the elements are completed with the necessary responses, it should be processed successfully. And I will post these slides along with the recording to the LCSR page on acr.org. There you can click on this LCSR upload template link, and that will bring you to the 1.0, 1.1, and 1.2 versions. So when you go to upload your exams, the file name extension has to be this exact extension, otherwise it's not going to load. So for example, if I were to load a file today at 2:26, I'm going to put the file name extension as LCSR_exam_2019 June 6th hyphen, as an example, 14th hour, 26 minute, 13 second. And that should be as a text file. All right, so when you go to upload your exam, it's automatically going to upload the exam to the facility that you have in the facility picker on NRDR in the upper right-hand corner. You can, however, using the template, assign the facility ID. You do have to put version 1.1 into the version field. Otherwise, if you do 1.0, it's automatically going to upload to that facility in the facility picker. So just to recap, if you have your facility in the facility picker and you put version 1.0 in the template, it's going to upload all of your exams to that facility. If you put 1.1 in the template and put the facility ID, you can upload multiple exams for different facilities using one template. So after you've filled out your template, if you go on NRDR, you're going to see an Upload Data tab under Data Collection, and you'll choose your file and hit Upload. Once you should receive a message stating that you can either continue or cancel, depending if you have any errors. If you do cancel, none of the records are going to be uploaded. If you hit Continue, they'll all be uploaded. You may have some that are uploaded successfully and some may reject. So how to check those, whether they were successful or rejected. If you go under Data Collection, there's a Data File Process Status. And over to the right, you'll see some red bars, there will be a download log file, show log file. I think there's a couple more there. The show log file, you can pull that up, and that will show you exactly why this record failed. So this one was invalid, refused new Medicare ID, but instead of me putting a Y or N, I actually filled in the Medicare ID, so it didn't get processed. Here it will actually tell you the number of files number of records in the file, how many were rejected, and how many were successfully added. And if you use this download log file right above this, that will bring you to this, and it'll actually be like a notepad, a text file. So the top one is what your file should look like with all of the vertical bars, and you can also see here the file name extension. If you download your log file and it has commas, then you didn't properly configure your computer. You do have to configure your computer before you upload that template, otherwise it's not going to work. So updating existing patient records, how do you do that? So the relationship between exams and follow-up records is one too many, but in order to upload a follow-up exam, you first need to find out which identifier was used when you entered the baseline or the annual screening. As I previously mentioned, if you go to the search exam link, you can search the patient in question. Once you locate the patient, if you click on that red exam number, you can scroll down to the demographic portion of the exam form to locate the patient's ID, social security number, or Medicare beneficiary ID. From there you will open the template and enter that identifier into the corresponding field shown here on the screen. So depending which identifier was used, you would enter either G, H, I, J, or K. Then you'll continue scrolling to the right on the template. This is just a screenshot, so it's not the full effect, but this is what the template looks like. So you'll enter either G, H, I, J, or K, and this is for a follow-up, and then you're going to scroll to the right until you get to your exam date, where you'll input the date of service the baseline or the annual took place. If you continue scrolling to the right, you'll find the follow-up field. And for an annual exam, you would take these same steps, with the exception that you would fill everything out beginning back at the first column A. If you're submitting multiple follow-up records for an exam in the same data file, each follow-up record has to be submitted on a separate row with the same key identifier on the exam record. If more than one exam exists for a patient, you should be entering the follow-up record for the most recent exam form. This exam date is less than or equal to the date of the follow-up. If the patient comes for a second follow-up, it must be determined that it was actually a follow-up that was performed. So for example, if the patient went to the emergency room and had a chest CT for some sort of trauma, you should not be entering that CT as a follow-up if it wasn't recommended as a result of the screening. And that's a big question that we get a lot. So you have to first identify, is it actually a follow-up? If they just went to the ER because they got into a car accident and it had nothing to do with that screening, then it shouldn't be entered at all. So the type of procedure is equally as important as the timing. Also, a patient must be asymptomatic of lung cancer. If a patient has had cancer in the past, they must be greater than 5 years since completing surveillance. ACR does not have guidance on those signs or symptoms of lung cancer, since we mainly focus on radiology and imaging. The signs and symptoms of lung cancer overlap with so many different things and other diseases, so it's not necessarily our area of expertise. For the patients that have developed lung cancer, their data falls beyond the scope of the LCSR. Also, we would like to have the data through 1 year of the screening, but other than that, any additional data won't be a part of the measures reported each quarter. So if you wish to continue to enter data for a cancer patient so you can have it all in one place, you can do that. However, it's ultimately up to you, but it's not required beyond that 12 months. The lung rad categories and other information we collect is for screening exams and not follow-up images. So you're only going to enter the lung rad categories for either the baseline or the annual under Section A, General, if you're completing manual submission. On here, I think it's it starts right around here. ACR doesn't weigh in on what should be a diagnostic interim visit order, since that falls out of the scope of lung cancer screening. All right, so now we're going to go over updates to the data dictionary. I know that you guys requested this in the past, so we have made several updates to this. The first update is the file version number. It went from being required if using 1.1, not available in 1.0, and now it's required if using 1.2, and it's not available if you're using version 1.1, so that just went up a number. The facility ID number went from optional to required. Those that look at the data dictionary a lot, 102 used to be facility NPI. We no longer use that. The next update is the number of years since quit smoking. We used to have a blurb here that said if the patient had stopped smoking but has not been a former smoker for a year. We've eliminated that because it didn't really fit into this category, and now the type of response is between 0.1, and that's 1 month, to 99.9, so we've completely eliminated that. The next one is 131.1. We've added other comorbidities, and that's required if number 131 you answered other specify, otherwise this field is not applicable. We've also added cancer-related history, and this is if to number 132 you answered other cancer specify, otherwise again this field is not applicable. 133 used to be optional, that's now required, but only if you answered other specify to number 132. Reason for recall, we added this. It was formerly LungRad's version, but we've now moved LungRad versions down to 151.3 3. So now we have 151.1, 2, and 3. And again, this all corresponds to the LCSR forms. Reason for recall, unable to complete, has also been added. So if you've selected unable to complete, please specify, then you have to complete the reason for recall for 152 or 151.2. Another one that we eliminated was 152. This was that previously reason for recall, which I said we've moved. 154 was required if you answered yes to other findings. Again, that's now optional if you selected other clinically significant or potentially significant abnormalities. Otherwise, you can move to the next one. And I believe it's the last one, the AJCC Cancer Staging Manual. This was required. However, it's now only required if overall stage TN or M status is reported. And if you guys have any questions that you're thinking of, you can go ahead and use the question box to submit those, and one of us will get back to you. We can also have you raise your hand at the end, and I will unmute your line so you can ask them aloud. Educational level, this was previously optional. It is now required if number 176 you answered other. And occupational exposure to agents that are identified specifically, that has been added, and I believe that's in reference to number 179. So if you answer other specified here, then you have to complete the next question as well. I believe that's it. We have a few more things to go over, and then we'll have time for some questions. So just a couple, you guys had asked that we dig a little deeper into the LCSR, and truthfully, the LCSR is straightforward. There's really not much more digging to do. Of course, if you have questions that arise, feel free to send those to us. But a couple questions that often challenge the users are, if you enter how do you enter the CTDI vol if it exceeds the limitation in the data field? So you should still enter it if it's greater than 2.5 milligray. If the facility, though, is ACR Center for Designation, then the reconstructed slice thickness still has to be less than or equal to 2.5. If the next one, if a patient does not qualify for CMS, are we still supposed to enter their exams? And yes, this hasn't changed. LCSR doesn't only accommodate Medicare patients, but collects lung cancer screening data for all patient types, insurances, and various criteria. We apply such to the broader scope of the LCSR, so as a result, we collect additional fields that CMS may not require, but we can accept all lung cancer screenings from participating facilities. The next question we don't get too often, but when we do get, they're really stuck on it. So if someone is called to come back in for their annual screening, do they have to wait a full 365 days to do that screening? And the patient's eligible for the screening no more than 30 days before and no later than 30 days after that 365-day mark. Self-referrals should be entered, and you can do so by entering 9 zeros for the ordering physician MPI. However, it will not be reimbursed by CMS. And again, all these questions and slides will be posted to the LCSR page on acr.org after the presentation. So a patient had lung cancer but no longer does. Are they still eligible? And this kind of goes back to what I said earlier. Yes, if the treating physician clears them, but the patient will remain in the surveillance program, or typically remain in a surveillance program. A patient can screen if it's been greater than 5 years since completing the surveillance program. So our next webinar is going to take place on July 18th from 2 to 3 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. We are going to discuss some updates that's going to happen to the NRDR portal, as well as have an open discussion for Q&A. And I'm going to try to wrap in Lou to go over some reports. And as always, you can submit a ticket to us at nrdrsupport.acr.org or email us at nrdrsupport@acr.org. Our phone number is there as well if you have any questions. And now I'm going to open it up for you guys to ask your questions if you have any. We'll give it another minute or two, but we haven't received any questions yet. Again, you guys can use the question box and type your answers or your questions there, and we'll get back to you, or you can raise your hand. All right, guys, we're not getting any feedback, but again, if you have any questions, send them to nrdrsupport@acr.org, and we'd be happy to get back to you. We will see you for our next webinar on July 18th. And again, we'll try to do a live Q&A as well as hopefully tie in Lou to go over some reporting questions. I know you guys like to dig in a little deeper for those. But again, as far as the lung cancer screening registry as a whole, it's very basic. It's a general overview. And if you have specific questions, let us know. Thanks for joining. Bye.